creativity requires a lot of vulnerability. What's awesome about collaboration is that it's not a singular lightning strike that everyone decides on. It's a series of countless decisions. Doing the creative things is how we get to creative ideas, not vice versa. And a game is a great way to get people in the door.
I'm Doreen Lorenzo.
And I'm Michael Baker.
Welcome to Creativity is the Job of the Future, where we talk to people who are harnessing the power of creativity to overcome major challenges. Hi, Gray.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you for doing this. Just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Garmon. I'm a designer and educator. I run my own studio called 2x2. I'm a professor of practice and design at the University of Texas at Austin. And I have a countless amount of projects where I use design to try to solve bigger things in the world, from global peace to public streets to how do we use creativity in a game to help everybody learn how to make the world a better place.
The premise of the podcast is that with everything that's going on with machines and what's going on in the world, critical thinking, creativity, those are the skills you're going to need and use. And so what we've been doing is highlighting people across a different spectrum that use creativity in different ways to solve problems or to help. We loved your sense of how you use it in education. We thought that that was super interesting. Obviously, you're a very creative person. We know that about you. What else, Michael? That's kind of the premise.
Well, there's this new project, right? I wonder if we can start there. I think we definitely want to hear about your journey.
Sure.
And then we can follow the path it takes us.
So this project that we've launched just recently is called Dream Up. It's the game of creative collaboration. It's a game board and instructions and cards. And we've been designing and making and testing and getting a lot of feedback about why it wasn't a very good game for a long time, and iterating on it and making it better and better and better until we reached a moment where we were like, every time we play, it was fun.
What's the purpose? Why'd you do it?
So I'm working on this project with three colleagues, Katie Krummick, Eugene Korsunski, and Justin Childress. All of us are educators and designers, and we've done years of teaching in the classroom, workshops, working with clients. And what we realized was that design or design thinking can feel overly structured. And everyone was learning these 5 steps and it had to be the same way. And we realized that as creative professionals, that's not really how great ideas come into the world. And so we were like, well, what better way to do that than make it a game?
What is it about this game that had to exist? What is that story?
We thought about a couple different ways that we wanted to interject some lessons that we knew we could teach in the classroom, but weren't always coming through when we noticed that people were using other toolkits or guidebooks or decks of cards or things like that. One of them was this idea that I was saying about wanting to break up the structured linearity, that it's step 1 goes to step 2 to step 3. Really, a creative process is much more like you start at step 37 and then you jump back to step 2 and then it's step 11 if there are even steps with numbers. And so there's this ability to navigate a creative process as it happens and as it comes up. So we wanted to be able to randomize and shake up people's expectations for what a creative process looks like. And then I think the last part was the fun element of it. We've worked on this long enough. I can go back and tease ourselves that the first version of the game was not fun. The cards weren't cards. They were like 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper that had like 4 paragraphs of text. And we really started from a little too hard of being educators who wanted people to learn. But what we learned and where the game has landed is that it is first and foremost a game. So it's about collaboration, teamwork, having fun, making something. Early feedback was that it felt more like an assignment than a game.
And who is this for? Like, what are you going to do with it?
We feel like there are 3 main areas. One is that it's totally for like friends and families. There's sort of a deep gaming card game community in the world. And this is a collaborative game, meaning that there's not winners and losers. And the challenges in the game are everyday problems like dealing with leftovers in the fridge or out of town guests or getting through the airport. So there's the like folks who love to play. The second group is really about learning environments. So I say it's a game first, but we also know that from the classroom, learning should also be fun. We're past the days of somebody standing in front of the room with a PowerPoint from 1997 that's just on repeat. So we wanted to be able to interject into these learning environments a way to play a game. So teachers, K through 12, work with a lot of schools in my practice. And then the third group is for folks who are facilitating. And we know that this is a way more fun way than just the same old set of slides and practices that people are doing.
Could you just give us a sense of like what is the play experience?
Yeah. So you have a group that you're playing with, and you divide into two teams, and each team picks a challenge that they want the other team to solve for them. You're not actually solving a problem for yourself, you're solving for somebody else. So you immediately have this practice of getting out of your own head. You're having to listen to somebody else, you're having to get their feedback along the way. Once you have your challenge, the teams jump into the first round called launch, where they're really just getting into the headspace of creativity. Before the teams get into solving any problems, they come up with a team name or a team handshake or a mascot or something along those lines that help them feel connected. And then there are 5 rounds of action cards, kind of challenge cards that they go through. They're randomized into a stack. Both teams will sort of do this, and every round you have 3 or 4 minutes to go through, do this creative activity. And then the last minute or two is that you actually share it back to the other team. And you're like, okay, we brainstormed 50 ideas for how to come up with a better way to deal with the leftovers in the fridge. And then you ask them, you're like, I'm just going to read them out. What do you think? Do you like it? Do you not like it? So you can sort of refine along the way. The second to last round is storytelling. So you get to finally pitch your idea to the other team. And then the very last round is awards. This is the collaborative element of it. There's no winner, but you go through all the award cards and you get to have an awards celebration ceremony for the other team, like most creative team, funnest idea. And what's really neat is that the ideas, because they're grounded in a real challenge, often actually have a useful outcome. So I keep saying the one about leftovers because a couple years ago when we were prototyping with a group of friends, that was the challenge that we asked somebody else to solve for us. And the solution is still on my fridge over here. And it's not so complicated. They didn't invent an app or change the world. We just, every Sunday night, we look through the fridge and figure out all the stuff we've got in there that we can eat or make meals out of. We write the meal list on Post-it notes and we put them on the outside of the fridge. Every day, whenever you go up, you're just like, oh yeah, what have I got? I've got this, I've got that. It helped us solve an everyday problem in a slightly new, more creative way that also just made our household a little more, I don't know, easier, sustainable.
So it's really interesting, right? Because you started out education, but it seems like that this has actually reached the masses in a very non-threatening way. People think I'm not creative. I don't want to do this. I can't go near it. So what's your intention with it?
Our hope is that because it's the format of a game, that it does make it more accessible and just easier to jump into playing something. But also, because it's a game and you get to draw cards, nobody has to have a pre-existing set of experiences or knowledge or design process or innovation process. They just get to play. Monopoly is not a game that's explicitly about learning, and yet it did teach generations of people about capitalism and rental income and jail and get out of jail free cards. And I think that's what's cool about games is that there is inherently a set of values that's embedded into the game that everyone gets to practice. And it's fun because you can try it on, but also leave it behind. Like you don't have to play Monopoly and then leave and go directly to business school. Like that's okay. But I think that there is something really fun in figuring out what is a game that might instill a new set of values for how to orient to the world. And I don't think that Dream Up is going to solve the sustainable development goals of the United Nations yet, maybe I should say. But really what I think is that we as people are every day facing challenges. There's little things in our lives that could be made better. And I think that's what design and creativity is for, is it's about helping us figure those things out to make them incrementally better, make our lives easier, make our lives better for other people. And a game is a great way to get people in the door.
So I wonder, about the role of play
Mhm.
in this process.
Learning environments can sometimes feel overly serious and they're formalized. There's a person in the front of the room that's the expert, assignments and grades, and there is value in that structure. But I also think that there's a real limiting factor to that. I think that one of the amazing things about play is that it gets us into a similar headspace that a student would have in a learning environment, but the stakes are so much lower and the barrier to entry is so much lower. All you really got to do is open the box, spread it out on the table, and have a little bit of fun. And maybe kind of a Trojan horse element to play, especially when you're using play as a tool for learning or new ideas or pushing something forward. I think sometimes creativity is assumed that it's a skill that you have or a thing that you're born with. I work with a lot of people that wouldn't obviously be called designers or creatives or things like that. You know, they're coming from finance or marketing or business or engineers, a lot of engineers in my life, a lot of teachers in my life. And if you ask them if they're creative, they say no. Because I've learned, and I believe that what they think is that they have to first have some set of creativity and then they're going to be able to go out into the world and start doing these creative things. And I actually have decided that the way that I want to teach and the way that I think people get into this creative space is flipped. You actually just start doing stuff first. And through the act of doing those things, the creative things start to happen. I love teaching sketching for this example. Just asking people to pick up a pen or a marker and put that marker to paper starts using their body in a different way, which starts using different neural pathways, which lead to new thoughts. And I love that it's sort of a secret shortcut, which is like doing the creative things is how we get to creative ideas, not vice versa. And play is such an easy way into doing creative things.
Because it's actiony, right? It's more than just, I think things about the future or I have ideas. It's like, how do you do things to get there?
That done enough times and in aggregate of enough people, I think gives us a different point of view on the world.
You just led me right into the question I wanted to ask. But first, I'm going to make one comment. I love the play aspect. Michael Baker, my partner in crime here, this type of play, you don't break things. You can't break a finger or an arm when you're doing this type of play.
That's true. Yes.
Hey, no risk, no reward. You
I
guys,
know.
come on. This is
By the way, everybody, Michael just told us he broke a finger doing Ninja Warrior play this weekend. So we're just giving him a hard time about that. But Gray, the question I was going to ask, and you led right to it, is tell me about the first time you used these skills and something good came out of it.
The one I think about pretty often that I can still feel the feeling was when I was in architecture school at the University of Texas, a small group of us went to East Austin for a couple weekends. It was a big vacant lot, and there was a community that was going to be living there in a new set of affordable houses that would be built. And so we worked with that community to imagine what would they want in this new thing, not as a piece of form, not the buildings themselves, but the way that people want to live. And so what we did on these weekends was we had all this leftover materials like old tires and politician campaign signs and wood and chicken, like so all this random stuff. And what we did with the community was that we built stuff together. We made a playground with like tire swings and a slide, and we built a little playhouse that it all looked kind of silly, and it, probably wouldn't pass a building inspection. But the point was it was a way for us to do something with people to help us get into a more creative space to say, what could this be? And at the very end of this process, we snapped a photo. It's like 10 of us who are architecture students in front of this playhouse. And I remember when the photo was taken, this feeling where I was like, whatever this is what I want to do as a career for the rest of my life.
great. I want to dig into how you understand, see, maybe think about limitations, constraints. And I'm thinking architecture school, having gone through that myself, there's a a bunch of cool ideas you can come up with, right? There's like an idea of a building or something to solve a challenge. And then there's the site. And it's like, oh, you can't build on half of the site because the ground won't hold the thing. And then there's like the sun angles. There's a thing there that's pushing back
Hmm.
at the creative energy. How do you think about that and see that? Yeah, how do you connect to that?
I love the architecture analogy. I mean, I decided not to be an architect, but I carried forward so much of that training. I think that the constraints, the limiting factors and the most challenging parts of whatever it is that I'm working on almost always become the thing that leads to the most interesting, innovative, important, fun element of whatever it is that gets made. And so I'll use the architecture metaphor, but there's a boulder and a tree and a river and a little swampy area, and it takes 2 days to walk into the site, and everything you build gets torn down before you finish. But I think that that extrapolates beyond architecture, obviously, that you think about the reason why we haven't solved it is because we haven't figured out how to both work within and challenge those constraints. Some of my favorite projects are defined by the things that we're not able to do. A number of years ago, I worked on a project with a huge group of friends and colleagues in Dallas where we wanted to transform a car street into like a pedestrian plaza. And there were so many reasons to not do it. Like, you can't take over a street. You can't get the permits for it. People are going to steal the stuff that you make. They're going to graffiti it. Homeless people are going to build tents and destroy it. And it took us about a year to do this project. And so we had to figure out and make friends inside of the city to figure out the right kind of permits to get. We didn't have any budget, so we had to make partnerships with fabricators and architects, and we got 25 trees donated to bring to the plaza that were going to go to another public park, but we got to borrow them for a while. And then all the furniture we made, nothing was stolen. The only thing that remotely looked like graffiti after a month was somebody who worked in the neighborhood in Deep Ellum every day on their lunch break was drawing a piece of art on one of the benches. And by the end of the month, it was this beautiful progressive marker and ink drawing. Like, so it's like not only did they not graffiti it, but another artist found a place to contribute. And so I think those are the things that we don't know what we can do until we try first. And we took over 3 blocks for a month and people loved it. We had people visit who were like, this has always been here, right? And we're like, nope, we made it last weekend. Yeah. And I think that's such a good sign. Like, when it feels naturally in place, it gives people like a whole new world to inhabit. It helps them to see a different possibility of what the future, the world around us could look like. And that's the most exciting part about it. Change takes a long time, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a long time to show us what's possible.
You clearly now have embraced that creativity is a problem-solving tool. So how do we more engage people? Because I think what people think is, I'm not creative. I don't have those critical thinking skills. I don't know how to do this. I'm just going to put everything into, one of the chat bots and let the AI do it all for me. So how do we convince people that this is a tool that can solve lots of different issues and problems if you let it?
It's a good question. I think that human beings inherently have these skills and these ways of thinking and working. I think it is innate to us just approaching the world. And there's a set of design theorists that their point of view, which I love, is that we didn't invent fire, we designed fire as a species. And like, we'll debate it, different podcast, different day, that kind of thing. The assumption is that we were all sitting around and we were cold, and then we decided to figure out a better way to respond to this. And we took something that we saw naturally happening outside, we brought it inside. To answer your question, Doreen, the way that we're able to help people engage with this is to give more entry points to practice it. I think it's just as true with other parts of life. It's like last year I started running for the first time, and the way that they recommend that you get into running is that you don't like buy the expensive tennis shoes and then go run 12 miles. That's how you hurt yourself. You start with a regimen of running and walking and weight training, and you slowly build yourself up to longer miles, longer races, you get to the level that Michael's at. And so I think that that's just as true with the creative practices. We've all got it. Everyone has the hardware to be able to be creative and solve problems. But I also think it's unfair to expect someone to do the equivalent of like a creative marathon on their first go around.
When did you kind of figure out or learn or decide, like, the collaborative process can be a very productive way to approach some of these challenges and projects?
I think that learned it as a little bit of a response to how I was trained. I think that the world of architecture is a lot of myth and legends about like one gifted thinker that is like pen to paper and then shows it to a client, and then you have the Guggenheim. And that never sat right with me because I think I was collaborative as a kid and I worked with other people, and then every time I got an architecture job, I was in a studio with dozens or sometimes hundreds of extremely talented people. And then, even if the architect was the most gifted one, you still have to hand it off to a set of contractors and plumbers and framers and welders. And so I think for me, it maybe part of it is a little bit inherent. Like, I like being on the team. You can kind of know people, you can be vulnerable, but also the possibility that you can work in a collaborative environment where the person on their first day on the job or the youngest person on the team or somebody from the community who's not trained in any obvious way can walk in and share an idea. And if the collaborative team environment is right, the idea wins. And I also think that what's awesome about collaboration is that it's not a singular lightning strike that everyone decides on. It's a series of countless decisions where somebody says a thing and somebody else builds on that idea and then somebody else draws that idea and next week a client gives you feedback on it, and then one day a student walks in the room and they're like, "I don't think so. What about this?" And you're like, "Oh, I never, worked on this for years. I never thought about it." When I think about the game Dream Up, I was reflecting on the fact that it's the game of creative collaboration. And also there's like a real meta moment where it's like the only way to create a collaborative game is in collaboration. And we all live in different places. So, like Vermont and Portland, Dallas and Austin, and we meet on Zoom. One point we all flew into Dallas and hung around Justin's house and worked for a whole weekend, but most of the time it's on Zoom. And part of that is deep collaboration, to work with a handful of other people that I can trust, that we can share ideas, good and bad, and make them better, that we can iterate on that. But also everyone is focused on a goal. Like, we knew what the outcome was, an amazing game, a game that helps people learn some of these creative practices, which also means that we iterated on that game so many times. I mentioned that the first iteration was 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. That was no fun. We also had dice, and at one point there was a spinner, and there was like a full-size whiteboard involved, and we're like, what if we fold it and put it in a box? So many bad ideas come through this thing. And then you like package it up, you put it in front of a group of people, and they play it in real time. And that level of visceral feedback is raw. Watching people play a game and get a couple cards deep and then look at you and say, I don't know what's going on. That's a real moment. And that's a moment where it's great to be on a team where we can talk it through. Say, I heard it this way. Oh, I heard it this way. And what do we think? And one of the things that we naturally took on as a collaboration was, if we all agreed, that was great. But we don't always agree, which is also great. But the goal was always, let's go test it. So we could spend all day on Zoom being like, I think we need a spinner. And somebody else is like, spinners are expensive or whatever. Well, let's just make a spinner out of some cardboard. And the next time we go to prototype the game, let's use the spinner and see what happens. Let's get that feedback. Let's watch it. Let's ask questions. And that's how the game got better. So yes, there was collaboration among the four of us who made the game, but there's also this collaboration of trusting the people that we tested and played with along the way.
Collaboration is great over time with people that trust each other. And it sounds like you built trust, but we have ego, right? People's ego gets involved and could derail this? How do you deal with that?
I teach a class at UT, a Design 101 class through our Center for Integrated Design. And the first week's topic is about collaboration. And one of the things that I asked, who in the room has ever worked on a team? And everyone raises their hands. And then I asked, how many of you have ever been on a team with a bad teammate? And it's also 100% of the hands, include, me too. I'd answer the same thing. And I quickly was like, all right, either the people in the room are the most amazing teammates that have ever existed, and all the bad teammates are outside somewhere, or we've all been a bad teammate at some point in our life. And that for me unlocked this element that collaboration is a skill set and a way of orienting to working with others, and not some people are team players and some aren't. And so I think that's where there's this other element of how do we support people to practice good collaboration? Like creativity and like these other things, if it's something that we can learn, then it's something we can get better at. And that's where it's important to try to understand, how are we showing up on teams? How are we showing up as people? And this is where personally I think that the practices of creativity and design, as a designer myself, start to butt up against our bigger questions about how do we interface with the world as good people? How do we understand ourselves? And how do we understand how our actions affect other people? And then we can bring that into a collaborative environment where we can start to then engage with other people. I think that creativity requires a lot of vulnerability. The ability to share an idea that maybe you've never said out loud before, or no one in the room has heard before, or to show a drawing or to hand over a prototype. I think that that requires a lot of vulnerability because we leave ourselves open to other people getting to have an opinion about it. And that can be really scary. If put into the wrong hands, it can be really damaging. I've seen this happen. I felt this happen before, where someone's critique of an idea sounds more like a critique of me as a person than the thing that I shared. And that doesn't feel well. So when I think about this, and when I'm putting together teams, when I'm teaching, when we're playing the game, is about how do we give people a set of practices that let them enter into the right headspace to be a little more vulnerable and to be little less critical, not to make the work better, but to understand that, hey, the whole person has shown up to this. Not just Grey Garmon, the designer, has shown up to this team meeting, but Grey Garmon, the designer and husband and guy who lived in West Africa and kid who grew up in Dallas, like all those parts of myself are also in this meeting. And that means that it could get a little messy, but it also means that I've got all this huge well of things to draw from. It's not just the stuff I read in a textbook in school. It's the thing I saw on the side of the road when I was 22. Like that is also a potential spark for something creative and new. I don't need someone to walk into a room and say, I have done my therapy and I'm emotionally vulnerable and I'm a whole person and my brain understands all of this. Doesn't work as well as bringing a whole bunch of people into a room and saying, all right, first thing we're going to do is we're just going to do a really quick check-in. How's everybody doing? I love doing intuitive contour drawings where I have people draw without looking down and they have to do a continuous line. I love it because it's fun and it's messy and it makes me laugh every time. But I also do it because what it does is it demonstrates vulnerability. You got to try something that you haven't done before. It's inherently an absolute mess. These drawings are a mess, and that's why it's funny. And then you share them as a group. You practice that vulnerability to say, hey, I made this thing, and you show it, and then everybody laughs. Nothing uglier than an intuitive contour drawing will come out of a meeting, right? So you've already set some bar where you can say, look, everything else from here is just going to be creative and fun and available. It's not really like a Trojan horse, but it is a little bit of, we don't always have to talk about it. Sometimes let's just do something together, and that will start to build that creative and collaborative trust, I think.
I love that. And yes, I have, every time I do those drawings, it's really interesting. Even after all these years, they're still a mess. Like
Yeah.
the hand, the brain, like nothing works together. And you just kind of end up with a blob. Talk a little bit more about maybe how the game would play into some of these the UN sustainability goals. How do you think the game will play into something like that? What do you want?
I think the greatest opportunity would be that the group of people who are working on some of these bigger challenges, I picked the UN Sustainable Development Goals as like a pinnacle of opportunity, that those individuals that are solving these problems from all the right angles, they're coming at it from technical aspects and business and financing and logistics, would also interject a little bit more creativity into that process. And inherent to that creativity is a little bit more about the people, to try to understand a problem not from the set of things to solve it in the normal way, but from asking another person a question, jumping in. So I don't think that Dream Up is the tool to solve those things. Let's be clear. Don't make my pull quote, Dream Up solves sustainable development goals. But I do think that it is one of the tools by which these groups of people can start to interject these creative practices and to start to open up and build this particular set of skill sets. We're entering these moments where we're having to solve new problems, so it also makes sense that we interject new ways to solve problems.
I wonder what you think about this approach in this moment in time. Is there something about utilizing play and creativity in this way, like particularly important?
Yes. What I feel like I'm seeing a lot in the world around me, and because we're so connected through the internet these days, is an overwhelming amount of challenges that need to be solved, that need someone to look at them, to understand them, and to try to respond to it in a new way. And what I feel like I see a lot around me, and what I also feel a lot, is a little bit of a freeze. Like we look at the challenges around us and they're so big, it's like, what do we do? And everyone has an opinion about it, and we're all sort of shouting at each other, which maybe feels good, but it's not helping us to figure out how to move forward with what to do about the challenges. And I think that one of the things, if I could wave a magic wand, that I see around me is that creative practices, design practices, art practices, those kind of things help us to further figure out what to do next. Meaning, what do we make? What do we test? What do we put out into the world as a means of not saying, I have an answer, but like, I have made something that I think would respond to this.
So, one of my favorite game designers is Jonathan Blow, who designed Braid and The Witness and some other incredible games, and has done a lot of speaking about this idea that games create a meaning of life for the player. Is there a meaning of life to this project? Is that what we're doing here?
I love this question. And I'm going to go with a hard yes. And I'm also going to share it in real time right now. But I do. I think that inherently, and maybe sort of just naturally due to the team that made this game, the sort of meaning is about a new way of working. And to do that, not from a standpoint of winners and losers in our game, but first and foremost from a place of collaboration. The last part of the game is an award ceremony where both teams get to praise the others just for working on stuff. At the end of Monopoly, the one who wins is because they have dominated and crushed all other players. And ours is the way that you win is that you get to celebrate someone else for the things that they made for you. I think that's the other sort of meaning to the game, is that you're actually dreaming up solutions for the other team.
You've been working on various ways to get people to do different things. From what I can tell, and I think I've known you for a while, pretty much your professional career, whether it's in sustainability, whether it's redesigning peace, whether it's what type of designer are you? I mean, you've been working towards this. What motivates you? What drives you?
Am I going to be the first person to cry on this podcast and trying to answer this question? When I was a kid, I used to do this thing called Odyssey of the Mind. It was a creative problem solving competition. Odyssey of the Mind was the thing that unlocked it for me. I started it in 3rd grade. It's a creative problem solving competition where you like get a problem, you work on a team. You have to also on competition days solve these spontaneous problems where you like walk in a room and they give you something to solve they've never seen before. And I think that was the first time that I was like, ooh, this is how I like to move through the world. As I got older and I started to understand the world, I think I started to see that there were challenging things to deal with. My mom was sick when I was a kid. I don't know why I'm getting so emotional about all this, but my mom was sick when I was a kid. And I think that kind of unlocked for me this opportunity to understand that there are bigger things that we could work on that affect people, that are difficult, that are challenging. And so I think for me, it started to look a little bit deeper to be like, oh, it's not just neighborhood play and soccer practice and after school math tutoring or whatever. There are real things in the world. And the more I saw them, the more I thought that it would be interesting to apply this thing that I really love doing, which is solving problems, to these things that seem unsolvable. I describe my career as bushwhacking. I went to architecture school and then I joined the Peace Corps. And for 27 months, I served in Ghana in West Africa. And then I went back to grad school and then I decided to start teaching. And so it's at a distance, it looks like I'm picking random things to do in my life. But as a designer and as a creative person, every one of those steps has been about either building up skill set or working with people to solve real problems. So taking all the things that I learned in architecture school about how to think creatively and then applying them to solving community-based problems in West Africa. It's not about giving people solutions, but it's about working with people to come up with solutions. And then that transitioned in this opportunity to start teaching. I never planned on being a college professor, but I realized that if one of my focuses is to solve these problems and to make the world a better place, teaching is a real vehicle for sharing that point of view. And then the last, maybe not the last, but the most recent thing has been working on design as a practice for peace, that an opportunity to sort of look at the world around us and see that the creative skill sets are not morally aligned, that the things that we do to make movies and fashion and buildings and products and technologies also need to be aligned with an aspiration to help people, to benefit the world, to benefit plants and animals and the climate. And so it leaves me with this intrinsic motivation to say, where can I be of service? Who can I work with to do this work? And how can we benefit everybody?
Grey Garmon is a designer, educator, and public scholar whose work empowers people to use design as a method and mindset for shaping a better future. He is the founding director of the Center for Integrated Design at the University of Texas at Austin and an associate professor of practice in design. He's also a co-developer of Dream Up, a collaborative board game of creativity and collaboration that's designed to spark your creativity while having fun solving everyday problems with your friends, family, students, and colleagues. You can find more information on Dream Up at dreamupgame.com. Creativity is the Job of the Future is produced in Austin, Texas, and hosted by Doreen Lorenzo and Michael Baker. Joy Diaz edited this episode, and Sam Lippman composed the music for the show. Be sure to subscribe to Creativity is the Job of the Future and rate and review the show wherever you get podcasts. For more information on our team, our guests, and our purpose, go to cjfpodcast.com. For Creativity is the Job of the Future, I'm Rebecca McEnroy. Thanks for listening.